And I just wanted to start off maybe by introducing myself a little bit for those that don't know me. I've been a local councillor for the best part of 20 years. I was first elected in 2003 as an anti-Iraq war councillor, and at that point I stood for an organisation called Socialist Alliance Against the War, and I think was the first candidate elected under that label. 4 years later I stood again, was re-elected. This time I was a Respect councillor. 4 years later, Respected had a fallout, and I stood as something called Left List, which was really interesting because I was the only candidate in Preston. There was no list of anything. I was on my own, but that's what I was called. I lost that election, but the following year I stood again. At this time I stood as Tusk and won. And then at the general election in last year, I stood as Preston Independent. So I say that for a number of reasons, really. So for the best part of 20 years, standing for electoral projects to the left of the Labour Party has been what I have been involved in various different ways. I have stood under almost every name possible, as you would see. I think unique in that way. But all of those organisations were relatively small, and we were chipping away at Labour's electoral base. I want to say that because yesterday Jeremy Corbyn announced that we have 50,000 members of your party. And I know that for some of us, you think, oh well, there was 800,000 people signed up, but I want to give us just a little bit of context about that. Because the Communist Party of Great Britain at its height at the end of the Second World War had 45,000 members. The Independent Labour Party at its height had 37,000 members. So your party, as a left of Labour electoral alternative, is now the biggest that we've ever had, despite the fact, in my opinion, it should be much, much bigger. We are where we are, it is there. So I want to start off with that, saying, you know, we should recognise and therefore be excited at the fact that they have got 50,000 members. And then the other thing I want to say then is that that announcement yesterday came not a day too soon, and we are a month away from the founding conference, and that is great, but in my opinion, probably 2 years too late. I thought we should have been announcing that before the general election last time round. If it wasn't going to be at the general election, I thought it should have been a month after the election. And then each day I was hoping that it would come, but at least we are here. And the reason that that call had to come was because for 40 years in this country, there has been a dramatic shift in wealth distribution away from ordinary working people and towards the fabulously wealthy in this country. At this point, there are lots of families across this country struggling to pay their rent, struggling to put food on the table, whose children will go to bed tonight hungry, and yet there are 50 people in this country whose combined wealth runs to £450 billion. That's a disgrace, but that £450 billion is equivalent to our entire education budget, our entire pension budget, and our entire healthcare budget. That's what 50 people own, while other people will send their children to bed hungry tonight. That's the reality of what 40 years of privatisation, of neoliberalism, of marketisation have done to this country. So the demand for a new party of the left has never been more urgent. That is what we're facing, and it's at long last that we have got an organisation that can put those demands on the table and offer hope to the many. So that's fantastic. I want to then think, well, where did this movement come from? Of course, there was that long history of neoliberalism, but the real factor in this was the Palestine movement of the last 2 years, and the fact that almost every weekend in every town and city in this country there is a demonstration in support of the Palestinian people, and on 32 occasions there have been massive demonstrations going through the city of London. And that has shifted politics in this country in a fundamentally important way. So much so that at the last general election, the pro-Palestine movement got the best left of Labour electoral results ever. We got 5 MPs returned, But across the country, Nandita, Andrew, various people up and down the country got fantastically good votes. And that was the basis, that was where we crystallised that anti-establishment, anti-austerity, pro-Palestine movement, which gave us the base of what your party came out of. That's important, because I want to come back to that when we think about the direction forward. So all those things are all the objective circumstances, the positive nature of the fact that we have got 50,000 people joining up. But I think it's fair to say that we are also at a key moment in the development of your party. There is a major fork in the road, and what direction will we take? And over the last 2 months, we have both been excited at the potential of your party and dismayed at the fights that are going on at the top of the organisation. And many of us almost wake up with a feeling of dread or disbelief about what the latest twist in that will be. That the leadership taking out legal cases against each other is something that we shouldn't be doing in a socialist party at all. The levels of bureaucratic control and centralisation, the fact that we've got a founding conference is fantastic, the fact that it is by delegates who will be selected by sortition, and I'm sure, like all of you, I had to go to my dictionary to work out what the hell sortition was a few weeks ago. But that is not the way in which we should be arguing our party should be selected. You know, there is a very democratic tradition in the working class movement in this country. It is that we have branches, we take debates into those branches, we have votes on those debates, we come to a decision, we send it up to conference, we have delegates who are delegated by their branches and come back and speak to their branches. Why are we trying to reinvent the wheel when we have got perfectly good methods of democratic organisation in our movement? So that's one danger, if you like, the Labour Party Mark II and bureaucratic control. But I think there's another danger, and that is in response to that we tack towards the hard left and we have a glorified socialist alliance where everybody tries to get their parts of the programme onto the agenda. What we have to say is that what we want is a radical, insurgent, left of Labour, mass party. And what we need to do is to think about what we share in common, the 80 to 90% of the things that we share in common, rather than focus on those 5, 10 or 15% that will cause divisions amongst us. That means focusing on class politics rather than the culture wars and identity politics which will tear us to pieces. We should be the ones that are arguing for renationalisation. We should be the ones that are arguing for more wages, for better wages, for food on the table, for investment in our health service, for investment in welfare, for welfare, not warfare. We focus on those things and we do that. And the final thing is that we should be absolutely clear that whenever we elect representatives, whether they be at council or as MPs, you know, there's a really old Billy Connolly joke, which most of you probably won't know because you don't come from Glasgow. But anyway, and what Billy Connolly said, he was asked one time, he said, the thing about MPs is, if you want to be an MP, that should immediately debar you. Now, over the last couple of weeks, I must admit, I have been drawn to that argument in a way which I probably shouldn't. But I don't mean that. But what I do think is that when we select councillors or MPs, they have to go to be representatives of us in our communities, in our towns, in our cities. And their job is to be megaphones for our movements, our social movements in the streets, our trade unions, our community organisations. Their job is to amplify the struggles so that we can take part in a movement which redistributes wealth away from those who have had it good for 40 years. Because the billionaires have made billions out of us. It's time they paid.